I'll just get that started now.
There we go. Very good. Well, look, thanks everyone for joining us this morning. It's great to see a few people here asking some, or ready to ask some questions. So this is a question and answer session about the Digital Clusters Initiative being led by Zeald and BNZ. My name is Jake Tippler, GM of Central Otago Wine Growers, for those of you that don't already know. And with us today, we've got Jarrah Borman, the Head of Strategy at Zeald, and Janelle Cooper, also at Zeald. She's the Communications Manager. We also have Jackie Marks, Head of Business Activation at BNZ, and Brandon Jackson, the GM of Growth and Performance at BNZ, here to answer all of your questions. I think if anybody has a question to get us started, perhaps they could unmute themselves and jump on. Oh, maybe I can start off the questioning just to get the ball rolling. One of the questions that I have been asked by a couple of members so far is, what are Zeald and BNZ getting out of this initiative? Fairly obvious question to start off with.
I might take the first part of that if you don't mind, and then pass on to our friends at BNZ. So first of all, Ata Maria, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're really excited about this project and the possibilities here of partnering with Central Otago Wine Growers Association for this digital cluster initiative. So in terms of what we're getting out of this from a Zeald perspective is, well, to be honest, we're not looking for any financial return out of this. This falls under our social impact remit at Zeald. So our kaupapa is about helping New Zealand become the most digitally connected country in the world, and so we're looking to use our technology set in many different ways to try and help businesses to build more resilience and open up more opportunities through the use of technology. We've been running social impact programs like our GEM initiative, providing free websites for the last couple of years, which was our response to the impacts of COVID. We have a very strong agency side to our organisation. That's where we generate our revenue, and so this particular initiative, as part of our social impact program, we're not looking to make revenue or anything out of it, but what we're wanting to see is some really strong growth for businesses in this association to kind of contribute to a really vibrant business ecosystem in New Zealand. So that's our goal, is to create a model here which can help from a regional economic development point of view. Rather than any direct return for Zeald. That's why we're providing so much value for free. So I might hand over to colleagues at BNZ who would like to, yeah.
I'll jump in there. So my title is GM Growth Sectors. So what we do is try and help customers grow, and we play a role in, we're sort of sitting between government and private sector, commercial bank with its breadth of network, depth of knowledge, and a focus on digitisation, because that's where we need to get to as a country. We want to move towards higher productivity, so we want to play a role in helping foster that. This is a pilot, with there's 3 pilots, and for us, we want to grow our customers. If they're growing, we're growing. If we're growing, New Zealand is growing. We're paying more tax, building bridges, hospitals, better standard of living, higher productivity. This is better for New Zealand, and we can see that we play a pretty powerful role in that as a commercial bank. So we've put investment towards this to work with our friends at Zeald to, as much as everybody else on this process, learn about what's the best way of building a cluster. It's not like it's done everywhere all the time. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. We'd all be experts at it. So part of it's learning, and part of it is helping businesses such as those that make up the association that you're part of, helping them grow. Probably and this might cover off other questions that will come in later, but part of our team is digital activation, technology industries, export, which is most relevant. So we help, and I'll talk to that bit there, we help customers set up or think about how to prepare for exporting, what markets to look at, link up with NZTE and all the government agencies, sort of act as the third leg of the stool between the private sector and government, and actually make sure that the effort and the time and the money that goes into, well, you put into growing your business is most efficient and most effective, and yeah, making sure that we're sort of helping you and giving helping you connect with other businesses, which is the purpose of this cluster, so that you save time and money and effort, and actually co-op. You know, cooperate, as well as compete in overseas markets. One of the key things I've seen is when New Zealand businesses work together, they're far more powerful than they work separately, particularly when you aim at higher markets or larger markets, I should say. I'll stop there. I could go on for an hour, but that's there's no sort of massive direct return we're expecting here. Hopefully, somewhere along the way, people go, "Oh, BNZ are good people. Maybe we should bank with them." But that's not. There's no metrics associated with that. It's actually about learning from the pilot. So, next question.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brendan and Jarrah. Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, perhaps I could just ask. I've joined this meeting to learn more about what you think it can probably do for us as a industry in Central Otago. The Central Otago wine growers in its early years did have a very collaborative approach to help growing our industry, and I think that was in fact one of its huge successes. That's dwindled over time, but it's still a bit of background there. But this is sort of obviously taking advantage of new technology, new ideas to sort of build on that concept, which I think is great. But I'm still in my head, I've not got a sort of any sort of a picture as to what it actually means. Can you fish that out of it?
I can take that if you like. Yeah. So what we're envisaging here with a technology-enabled digital cluster is that each individual organisation business within the organisation has its own e-commerce site. Now there'll be varying degrees of adoption there across the group at the moment. Sorry, I just realised there's another person in the waiting room, so I'll let them in. So what we want to do is make sure that everyone has access to their own e-commerce site in the first instance, and so that's available to everyone within Central Otago Wine Growers Association. Then what we want to do is make sure that all of those sites are able to sync through into a centralised marketplace. Now, the benefit of that is that by having every winery that's part of the cluster publishing their products into a centralised marketplace, is it makes for a more compelling customer proposition. What that means is you'll be able to attract more people to that marketplace, and so consumers are able to arrive there and discover more of the wines that are available from the Central Otago region, and in doing so they'll keep coming back to that location. So it's really a product discovery for consumers, discovery process, but it allows for much more efficient collective marketing into new markets, maybe internationally and so on, and so it makes things far more efficient for attracting new customers.
Right, so it's something that would be accessible to the end consumer.
Yes, and it could also be B2B as well. So if you were looking to, you could actually have it configured so that your suppliers that want to that purchase overseas in bulk lots are able to do that through special logins as well. The final mix of how that marketplace works is yet to be determined. That'll come through the workshops, but it certainly makes a more compelling proposition from a B2C point of view, and it has the capabilities of handling B2B ordering as well.
Okay.
I guess one of the things I'd ask the question is, how do you use an e-commerce platform to reach more consumers? How would you go about doing that? Where are they? And how can you best use the technology that Zeald are going to make available to build a brand and push that out to, to wherever you want to push it out to? So it's a tool to achieve your ambitions, is how I'd put it.
One of the key focuses of it, I suppose, is from when we were initially designing the solution with BNZ, was taking a group of businesses and giving them more opportunity to project their products and services out of their region and into new markets to bring revenue back into the region. So that's a key plank of what we're trying to do at a high level. How we exactly configure that will be kind of up to the cluster in part. Yeah.
Does that answer the question, Laura?
It helps, thank you. Yeah.
Where are the gaps?
I'm not sure that there are any at the moment that I can see. I think the concept is great, because as I say, I think one of our successes as an industry here has been our ability to work together to raise this, well, I suppose in the initial stage, raise the profile, but to project the product to markets that we were interested in. So, as from what I hear you saying, this is a way to continue to do that, but you're taking advantage of digital technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the idea of digital clusters is to reach bigger market domestically and potentially internationally as well. And I'll go back to that previous point. When I've been overseas with delegations and you see New Zealand Inc. at play, so the government and opening doors and the private sector pushing their products or their, this would be products in this situation rather than services. It's very powerful, and people like, and you've got a good provenance story. There's ways you can articulate the special nature of your region and push that through the brand. And so that's kind of the opportunity there. If you're working together, you can think about the best way of promoting your products into whichever area.
One of the opportunities here is that we use the skills and expertise from BNZ and the marketplace built by Zeald to enter a new international market, one that perhaps hasn't really been tapped by Central Otago wine growers yet. And again, it's that collaborative marketing action that would enable the sort of economies of scale to make that possible and or easier especially for the smaller wine growers in the region.
I'll just give one example to put some flesh on those bones. And look, it may be the wrong one, right? And so don't hold me to the country. But say, for example, you said, okay, we want to target a city in China because that's what the information says. The data says we should be going towards, and that's we've got connections and relationships. Well, then we could work with NZTE and go, okay, we want to target that particular city. Where are the supermarket chains there? Do we want to go into the supermarket? Do we want to go into whatever channel you want to sell through, and try and bring those together, working with it. There'll be a head of export and engaging NZTE and that sort of thing. So rather than everybody trying to do it differently, you've got a marketplace, you've got a brand story, and it's going to be consistent. And then rather than sort of one person, putting all that time and effort into it, you've got a whole bunch of people, your association, and you've got a marketplace, e-commerce marketplace that you can sell through, and you're tagging the other NZTE, BNZ sort of skill sets and relationships on board. And obviously you would have to build your own relationship in time, and how you do that would be up to you guys. But that's just one example. That's a pretty rough and ready one. But I guess part of the challenge is just visualizing what your end game is, and that's what the workshops are for. But you guys will have a view of where you should be playing, I suppose. And if you don't, that's something that can be done with NZTE and the workshops.
Sounds good.
Does that answer your questions there, Ward?
Broadly, thank you. One I do have, and it's probably a bit of a red herring at the moment, but I'm wondering, I think particularly about international markets. Have you thought about how to link the marketing effort with the practicalities of getting the product to the market in a sort of a coordinated,
Yeah. So that'd be Jared. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, so I mean that would be part of the planning process, right? So we'd want to look and identify which markets we're targeting. Then you would obviously work in conjunction with you and partners to define what the regulatory requirements were to go in there. And the idea here is that you'd actually only have to do that once, so that people from that country would be able to order through the marketplace rather than everyone trying to fight that battle on their own. So it would be part of an overarching initiative where we'd map out a strategy for you that would be, right, potentially we just start domestically and get some volume to start with, and then look at target countries where there are opportunities to collectively market and sell in there. Yeah, and depending on the type of customer you're trying to attract within those regions, it could be, if it was B2B, we'd look to create logins for those customers so they could order off the site in bulk, or maybe a B2C, depending on how easy it is to ship. Yep.
There's potential collaboration opportunities for the cluster to utilize some of the existing export services. Just as an example, New Zealand Wine Home obviously can help with exporting to many countries, not all, but many. And so, there's ways of problem solving that depending on where we end up marketing the platform.
Okay.
Owen, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi, good morning. A couple of observations. It seems like when I went through the PowerPoint that you gave a week or so ago, it seems like it's a digital modern version of a cooperative, or am I on thin ice on that one?
I don't know if we'd call it specifically a cooperative, but it is you're working in a co-opetition model is essentially how it's defined within a clustering framework. So the businesses are essentially competing against each other, but cooperating at the same time. So in the same way that if you were all publishing your products onto a marketplace, you'd all be competing on, the individual brands level. You'd still do that at the marketplace, but to get people to the marketplace, that's where your cooperation would come into play, if that makes sense. So it's slightly different. It's close, but there's a slight difference there.
The understanding. Can I ask? I mean, is this one of 3 pilots? Is that?
Yes, it is.
And can I ask the other entities that are being piloted?
Yeah, absolutely. We're disclosing that at the moment. Just checking with Janelle. We are.
Unmute myself. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
But it's in confidence at this stage because we're just working through the final pieces on the public announcement via media release. But yeah, we're happy to talk about that here.
Maybe don't mention names, just mention industry types.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, I can. So we've got one collective, which is it's not a collective. It's a trust that's based around artists from a particular region, and they're grouped around a particular waka. So they're a group of Māori artists that will come together and sell through that marketplace. So that's one of the other clusters, and the other one is more what we'd call a virtual cluster, which is they're not tied to a particular region. They're actually distributed throughout the country, and they have a range of baby products which will come together into a marketplace as well.
Cool. No, I was just curious. My last question is, I mean, this is a pilot. Going forward, what are likely to be the costs to us as far as an association?
It's a good question. So that hasn't specifically been defined. Part of the workshop so that we'll be going through is how does the cluster want to organize itself, and what sort of costs will the cluster itself look to have for members and participation so that it becomes sustainable. From a technology point of view, we're covering the costs of the hosting of the website, the development of the websites, and we're doing that for approximately 2 years after launch, as well as providing marketing support as well. At the conclusion of those 2 years, if it's something that everyone wants to carry on with, and we certainly hope it is, that the only costs that are kind of fixed would be some hosting costs for the marketplace itself, and the cost for that would be tied to how popular it is and how much traffic it gets and so on. And then from there, the cluster would define what sort of marketing engagement that they want to have, whether that's with us, which would be great, but you're welcome to go anywhere else as well.
Probably take a step backwards and go back to the original reason for this, is that all the research shows that where there are clusters around the world and people do work together in that co-opetition model that Jared described, you can smaller regions and smaller businesses can access bigger markets, and through yes, you have to coordinate your logistics and all that sort of thing, and work together on that, and work together on understanding where you want to play and how you want to play. But getting alignment on that while you're still competing with your own products and brands means that not every business is individually investing in all those costs, right? You're sort of sharing those costs and reaching into bigger markets together. And also, you should be able to tell a story about the region and the people behind it and what makes it interesting, what makes it special. Sell a story and make people fall in love with the people and the product in the region. And that's a more efficient way of, from what we expect and seen from other clusters around the world, using technology, that it's a way of growing smaller businesses into medium-sized businesses reasonably quickly, and giving people access to much bigger markets with all the, obviously there's some hurdles to go through as always when there's growth, but that's what we hope to help and support with. And the idea is that it becomes self-sustaining. We want to get it going, and then for the association to see the benefits of it, make it work, and take it beyond that 2 years and let's make another tool of trade, really. That's kind of that's the philosophical rationale behind it. Jarrah, is there anything you can sort of embellish that? There was unscripted sort of comment. That could be a complete friggin' disaster. So tidy it up for me, will you?
So look, yeah, from our point of view, what we're looking to do is use technology to help all the businesses within the cluster grow, right? And so the model is designed so that the revenue that's generated from the activity flows back through to the individual businesses. I think it's really important to look at maybe just the types of marketplaces that you see in the world to give you an idea of how we've designed this and what it means. So you've got the difference between a centralized marketplace and a distributed marketplace, right? So a really centralized marketplace is something like Amazon or AliExpress, where everything's tightly controlled and everything runs through the marketplace. And as it does well, they tend to start ratcheting up the percentage and prices and everything and starting to pull all the resources and handle all the payments, and they get the majority of the value. And the people selling through the marketplace kind of have to play ball and their margins get squeezed. So that's one end of the scale when it comes to a marketplace. The other end, you've got something completely decentralized, right? And that would be, an example would be Facebook Marketplace, where people just post listings and comments and all the transactions and actual trade happens completely outside of Facebook, right? And so they don't have any part to play in the actual payments processing or any kind of regulatory or control. So what we're wanting to do is something in the middle, which actually gives the benefit of a centralized marketplace where everything's there and the customer has a great experience, but it's then decentralized. So what happens when someone buys from the marketplace, the orders get synced out to the individual e-commerce sites and processed as if they were just an individual order on those individual sites. And all the value flows back down to the individual members. The idea being here that as a new customer discovers your business through the marketplace, they end up essentially transacting and getting an order directly from you, and then you have that connection added to your database and you're able to communicate with them directly as well. So that's what that discovery process looks like on the marketplace. It's actually creating connections of value for those individual businesses. And so that's the structure that we've tried to create here, which is a little bit different to either of those marketplace technologies that exist at the moment. Maybe helps back up the story that we're trying to tell here. Yeah.
Question: You've mentioned drawing on the services of other agencies like NZTE. I recall that some years ago NZTE had a program of trying to develop clusters, work with clusters. Are you drawing on any of that sort of experience or connections?
Yeah, they had. Yes, we are, and their feedback was it's pretty challenging, but I think the technology's changed a bit since then, and I don't think they've taken quite the same approach. It really does. One thing that does come down to it is, and I think as we've all agreed is a critical feature, was one of the screening factors in our appointment of the 3 pilot winners is raw enthusiasm. If there's an association in place that there's a structure to actually drive stuff forward, is pretty critical, and that's some of the feedback from NZTE at a high level, that it needs to be, you need drivers in the association or the cluster itself. We've made the comment that raw enthusiasm can make up for a lot of the other sort of areas that may be lacking at the start. If people are really into this and really see the potential and want to drive it, that's a powerful thing, and we've seen that with one of the other winners. We can see that there's a couple of gaps, but just there's a strong personality that wants to make this work and is going to drive it. So we're like, okay, we can back that, and help corral. So it is a pilot in the sense that we're giving something a go, but we're also keen to make it work and work with everybody. But it does come back to I guess the willpower and the effort that comes from the collective as well, and then you've got to see value in it. So that's what's worth having these conversations and identifying any challenges to that process. So any questions are good one, I think.
Yeah, I've got another couple. Is there a critical number of growers that would be needed to make this sort of operational and sensible? And if so, Jake, have we achieved that number? And my second question is, in terms of going forward, what sort of time input is anticipated from individual growers to get this up and running?
I'll answer the first part of that question there. I think the critical number the BNZ and Zeald were looking for was 15 businesses. At this stage, we have expressions of interest from over 30. So I think we'll very easily hit that critical mass. And I'll hand on to Jared to answer the second part of that question.
Cool, thank you. So do you mind just giving me that second part of the question again, please? Sorry, I just got distracted.
Sorry, just the sort of time input that you'd anticipate from individuals. You know, some of us are small traders, you know, time is valuable. I think, you know, we haven't got wide representation here because I think everybody's probably busy in the
I guess I understand. Yeah, this is a pretty busy time of year. So, so from our point of view, especially during the first probably about 5 months from here, 5 to 6 months, there'll need to be a steering committee that comes together from the cluster, and now those individuals will need to invest a bit more time over those early periods to go through the workshop process and help build out the structures and everything that's required to actually launch the marketplace. From an individual a business point of view, if they already have the right type of e-commerce site, then we can potentially plug that straight into the marketplace. And so the efforts there may be minimal. So that would be someone that either is on Shopify, WooCommerce, or Zest, which is our New Zealand e-commerce software. So if a business is not on one of those pieces of technology, there might be a bit more work to make sure that they're ready to publish their products through to that marketplace. Or if they would like to take advantage of getting a new e-commerce site, there'll be the work required as part of that. On an ongoing basis, you'll be processing orders that come through the e-commerce site in a similar way to you would be now if you were engaging in e-commerce. If you weren't doing that now, then there would be just that additional work to process those orders and feedback to the steering committee on a regular basis around how things were going. So that's in terms of the actual sales and e-commerce. There will be another layer on top of that. We want to, because it's a pilot program, we're going to be wanting to gather some pretty good metrics around what sort of impact there is from this. So there will be the requirement to provide some detail around, you know, how the business is operating now and how it's progressing as the cluster gets up to speed, just so we can actually really quantify the impact of this project. So those would be the areas that I'd say there would need to be some time invested, and there'd be varying degrees based on the current level of digital adoption. But if there wasn't a lot of adoption now, then there's some huge, massive benefits for those businesses to put that effort in and get there. So, does anyone else from Zeald or BNZ have further comments around the time investment?
No.
Yeah, I think that mostly covers it. We're also working at the moment just to put a framework around the workshops that we're going to be running as well at this kind of early stage. And we're looking at breaking that down into about 3 or 4 2-hour virtual workshops. That's just taking you through the process to onboard. So we'd be covering things like the commercial rollout and the kind of the tech onboarding and evaluation like Jara's just talked about, and also doing we're wanting to put some bespoke training into one of those sessions as well. And so that might be around, you know, pricing and margins or things related to export or things like that. So that would be tailored to the cluster. And then another 1 or 2 workshops. So the 3rd and 4th would be looking at the branding piece as well. So there'd be, a couple of sessions there. And that might not be every single business, you know, if you've got 30 in the cluster there, it may be that it's a handful or a representation of the cluster who attend those workshops, and that can be brought back or relayed back to the rest of the businesses, because we also understand this is the busiest time of year as well. So we've been in discussion about that with Jake. So we'd expect that at the beginning there would be a little bit more time required, but as things got underway, it should be reasonably manageable.
It also seems that with the time required, it's probably going to be less time required for this project than if you were to go off and do it on your own or set up your own e-commerce site or website. So yeah, huge advantages in doing it collaboratively.
I think that's a really key point. It'd be you save more time doing nothing, but you know, if you're going to grow the business, yeah,
Cool.
to find a point on it. But.
Yeah. Nice. Does that answer your questions, Owen?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. You know, Jake, I guess you'll be reaching out to us to look for committee members, and just wondering if there's a profile or a skill set that would be required to not that I'm volunteering, but just sort of wondering what would be required in that committee.
Yeah, so you're right. I am reaching out to members to set up that steering committee. As part of the expression of interest form, there was just a question as to whether or not people might be interested in joining the steering committee. Around about half of the expressions of interest so far, people have said that they would like to join the steering committee. So that would at this stage be 15 people, which might be too many for a steering committee, but we could whittle it down based on the expertise of those people. And in particular, if you're talking about which expertise might be useful, I suppose people with good sort of commercial and digital understanding would be helpful, but also some expertise around sort of export markets and those sorts of challenges within the wine industry would also be helpful for the steering committee, because that could potentially open some doors for us. Anything to add there, Jarrah?
Also, we're developing a wee bit of a list around the skill sets that we think would be really valuable to have within the cluster as well. So we'll share that with you as part of the kind of workshop process, and that will probably help you identify maybe some key skills that you'll need. But I think you've covered the high level stuff pretty nicely there, Jake. Yeah.
But it is domestic as well as export. I mean,
yeah.
this discussion sort of moved towards the export, but
That's both, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think there's a huge opportunity domestically.
Yeah, so to see the domestic side of it as the hygiene factor, and then the export opportunities as the cream on the top.
Hey, Jake, just from might be a dumb question, but what's the split between growers and wine producers? You know, actual finished product here.
All of the people who have expressed an interest so far produce wine and sell wine.
Okay.
Cool.
Not all of them grow it themselves.
Yeah. But they're all
they do sell wine.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the comment was made before. I thought, oh, hang on, just making sure I got my facts right here. Yeah. Cool.
Very good. Do we have any other questions?
So we want to talk about logistics, Jarrah, in terms of you know, when sales go through and all that sort of thing.
I've got a question if you can. Are there examples around the world where this concept has been working well for the wine industry?
That's a great question.
I'm not sure that I know the answer to that.
It's a great question. So there's not like the digitally enabled cluster is quite unique. We've found some moderate examples of it around the world, but nothing that's being done to the level that we're proposing at the moment. Clustering itself is actually quite a well respected and regarded model within economic development, and has been in place for a number of years. But what we're proposing here is a digitally enabled cluster, which is just a little bit unique. So there, as far as I'm aware, there's no examples of wine growers that have done this sort of thing. Certainly not in the way that we're looking to do it. But in terms of clusters, there's lots of examples of clusters around the world that have been really successful. And the key characteristics of a traditional cluster are an area of specialization within a particular region, and some really good examples of that, like Silicon Valley, Hollywood, all of these sort of things. These are the examples of traditional clusters where you've pulled skill sets and resources and created areas of excellence around a particular specialization in an area. So that part's really well known, and if anything, you actually represent that traditional cluster model where Central Otago is well known for wine growing, and it's got a reputation there. What we're doing is layering this digital piece on top.
Okay, thanks.
I suppose just that it's not quite completely related, but one of the clusters we sort of looked at was in India, which with traditional artists, weavers and things like that, who live in quite remote areas. And what they saw with providing digital access to the rest of India was that these are quite marginal lifestyles, but quite ancient sort of skill sets were revitalized, and because they could actually access bigger markets, and there's a story behind it, and it increased employment hours, and so that's that's one of the benefits, and one of the reasons we're doing the pilot is, and as I say, less relevant for you guys, but perhaps for another one of the pilots, is that you are giving people that are normally trapped by geography and a smaller population access to a bigger population through technology. And so the same principle applies here, but it's just not quite the same product and challenge. But we have seen some of those clusters being very successful. It's certainly, if not solving every problem for them, it's certainly increasing employment and opportunity.
One of the other questions that has been put to me so far, and it's actually something we're still working through, but I thought I'd just quickly bring it up here, is around about the legal structure of the entity moving forwards, the digital marketplace, and how that would look. At this stage, like I say, we're still taking some advice, but we're probably going to set up a separate legal entity for the digital marketplace. And at this stage, it's looking like that will be something, an incorporated society. So much like COWA is already, it would be a sort of a replication of our existing sort of membership structure and rules, just to make that initialization, the setup of the incorporated society a little easier for us. But that also then keeps it a little bit separate from the activities of COWA and COWA's members itself, and allows it to go off in its own direction if necessary moving forward.
Good to know. I think we've got a session later on today, Jake, just to talk through that a bit more, haven't we? So yeah.
Yes, yeah. Like I say, we're still taking some advice on this, and we've got to work through a few of the details, but that's we were currently thinking. Did anyone have any questions or follow up to that? Well, maybe if there's no other burning questions on people's minds, we could wrap this up.
I've got one. Oh,
please.
How do people feel? Like, do you think this is crap, or do you think this is an opportunity? Do you think is it too hard, too mind bending to get your head around, or can you sort of see that it's worth investing in, what in terms of time and effort, or is it still you still got to figure it out? I'm just intrigued to see what your sort of initial response is.
Well, my initial response is I think it's an excellent idea. It builds on what I think COWA, or the Central Otago wine growing industry has worked in the past and has achieved, and it could reinvigorate that to some extent and build on it. So I think it's wonderful. Just going back to your entity, Jake, rather snide aside, but why did we wind up Cooperative?
That's a very good question for another day.
Don't answer that. But the thing is that we did have a structure, but another one is fine.
Warwick, I think that if there's a history of cooperation and working together, I think it's a really powerful position to start from, because that comment I made before about raw enthusiasm, if people are going to can see the benefit and can work together, that's a really powerful thread to weave through this process and opportunity, I think.
I think it's something to remember if we're working with Central Otago, because the industry here managed to, or has managed, I think, to position Central Otago Pinot Noir particularly as an internationally recognised product of extremely high quality, and that's been done by a group from really a Barefield staff. So there is a history here of working in this way for the benefit of all, and something that, as I say, I believe that we could build on and go forward with.
Well, Jake, if you're going to set up an unincorporated society, that should be weaved into your constitution then, you know, because that would actually, you'll set a set of rules and behaviours and expectations for the group, you know, and that'll solve, because there'll be disagreements and as you go through, you know, where you want to play and how you want to play, etc. But if you have that weaved into your constitution, I think that's a really good thing to refer back to.
Yes, indeed, and I believe our existing sort of constitution and rules are very much along those lines, and so being able to kind of replicate what we've already got for the cluster will be, well, I think we'll support that.
Awesome.
I would also just echo what Warwick said in terms of, I think it's a great idea, and very intrigued. So I'm positive. Thank you.
Right. Cool. Sorry, Jake, I cut you off, so I think now you can wind it up.
Okay. Has anyone got any other comments or feedback for Brandon there? Well, if not, then maybe we'll wrap this up, and thank you all for taking your time today to join us and ask your questions. I especially want to thank the teams at BNZ and Zeald, Jara, Janelle, Jackie, and Brandon. Thanks so much for your help today and answering all of our questions.
Pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Cool. Have a great day.
Everybody. Cheers.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.